This episode is sponsored by Sage House. Here on The Mothers, we talk to a lot of high-performing parents, and a theme comes up again and again. We all need help, but no one knows how to ask for it, especially when it comes to the myriad of things that make up the mental load. The dentist appointments, the kids' pants that suddenly don't fit, the gymnastics enrollment window that closes in 6 minutes, the dry cleaning someone needs to get, and the dinner someone has to make. All the things that aren't quite childcare and aren't cleaning and take up roughly 27% of our brains. Turns out what we need is a house manager, because the mental load is what they do. And Sage House will help you find the perfect one. They place exceptional household support across the US and Canada, and they even train nannies to step into house manager roles as your kids get older. They're also on a mission to destigmatize this kind of support. We judge ourselves so harshly for leveraging support if able. And what's so nice about Sage House, and what I really connected to about their brand, is that they finally make it feel logical, practical, necessary. I don't know, like working with a physical therapist to recover from surgery, or partnering with a financial advisor. We don't have to do it all alone. It's also founded by a mother of 3 who obviously gets it. Visit sagehouse.com. That's Sagehouse, SAGEHAUS.com. And finally cross the invisible load off your list. I'm Sarah Brown, and this is The Mothers, real conversations with leaders, creators, and thinkers about who we are, what we want, and how we build meaningful lives alongside motherhood. Hi, everyone. It's been a reflective March for me, rounding out a year of The Mothers interviews and taking in all the wisdom and generosity of each guest and trying to figure out what to make of it all. So many impressive stories, so much resilience, persistence, so many people making what, to me, looks incredibly hard seem easy. And then also so many people, generally our authors, telling me, oh, no, it's hard. It's a disaster. And sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. But a lot of our listeners are really curious about truly how. They're inspired by the humanity of our guests, their determination to do work that matters, but are craving practical solutions. I love this push, and I plan to spend time harvesting some real answers. I also want to believe there are practical solutions, but they're all probably based on having some degree of existing leverage. Resources to pay for childcare, a house cleaner, a house manager, even if it's expensive, a partner that stays home, or family that lives next door, a level of seniority in industries that offer more flexibility, or, as is the case with this week's guest, timing. Building and grinding and making her way to the proverbial summit before having kids. Our guest today, I'm so excited to say, is Sarah Kauss, founder and former CEO of Swell, the woman who turned a $30,000 idea into a category-defining brand that grew to more than $100 million in annual revenue and helped displace billions of single-use plastic bottles. To make it personal, she's the reason you have a cool, reusable water bottle on your desk or in your cup holder. But this conversation isn't just about building a company. It's about what happens before that, when you know you're meant to build something, but you don't yet know what it is. And it's about what happens after, when you realize you may want something different. Sarah describes herself as a restless soul, which I love. Someone who always knew she wanted to create, to lead, to do something meaningful, but for years couldn't quite find the idea. What's so interesting is that Swell didn't come from a perfectly timed, fully formed vision. It came after a nonlinear path, one she calls the classic jungle gym of experiences across accounting, business school, and commercial real estate, and at a moment when she had stopped trying to force the answer and was finally open to it. In this conversation, we talk about that path, the winding, often frustrating search for direction, and how so many of the experiences that feel like detours are actually what prepare you to build something real. We also talk about phases of life, how timing matters, how motherhood reshapes ambition, and what it looks like to build something in one season of your life and choose something different in the next. As Sarah says in this conversation, if she had not had her son, she would not have stepped away from Swell. This is a conversation about ambition, identity, and the idea that your life can hold multiple chapters, each one meaningful, none of them final. So please enjoy my conversation with Sarah Kauss. first, most importantly, you know Kendra, obviously.
I do.
I love this connection.
I love that. How do you know Kendra? I love Kendra.
Yes, she's wonderful. So you and I have similar but different paths and experiences through career, at least from what I could pick up from all I could find on the internets. But in between, I'm from Boston, wound up in San Francisco, chasing a dream, found my husband there, moved back east by way of New York, and did a stint there in between. I was in PR and comms and branding for a bit, and then wound up at Google in Boston. But in between was like trying a boutique PR communications thing where I met Kendra. And then I left, moved back to Boston, and then she was in New York for a while, eventually moved to London. But I think she was moving on to Swell shortly after I left. So anyways, and that she and I reconnected through the mother's concept, and I was learning about what she was doing and all she's been through. And yeah, she's been, as always, a very enthusiastic champion.
She is. So, and she told me I would love the conversation with you, and I trust her. So
Oh, good.
Of course, I'll talk with this cool podcast.
This stranger.
But I trust Kendra. She's wonderful. So
yeah, she's awesome. Good. Well, I think I love the How I Built This podcast anyway, but I went back and listened to yours, and I just felt such enthusiasm and joy and sort of positivity and optimism through the speakers. And you were so sort of candid about the process, the good and the bad. And I just felt like it might be a really nice kind of a continuation of that. Because the whole concept of this platform is that I felt there just aren't spaces for these, world beater, high powered, highly accomplished women to also talk about the other side of their life that we're often carrying as we're building businesses and running companies and all this stuff. And my pie in the sky dream is that I think having more of those stories empowers women to continue on and pursue these things. If you can see it, you can be it concept. But I also think it helps us advocate for more sort of structural support and cultural understanding of what women are carrying when they're showing up, whether they have kids or not. But in this context, with a kid involved, you're carrying so many other things and still dominating in the way that you are. And I don't think we really acknowledge that. And that was something I didn't even acknowledge that within myself until I left, had a long career at Google, and had 3 kids along the way, and left to pursue a new thing. And only then, when I wasn't working full time, did I realize all the things I had been doing while working full time. So that's a little bit about where this comes from. And yeah, very excited to get to know you. Do you have any questions before we kick it off?
Oh, I just want to say thank you for your flexibility in starting a little bit late today, because I had some motherhood duties this morning at my kid's school. So
I know.
Yeah,
how'd it go?
It was great. I'm just so proud. He had a Teddy Roosevelt presentation this morning. So
oh my gosh,
and all about Teddy Roosevelt. So I couldn't miss the big share out. So
I love this. Do you get involved, or are you a enabler? Or an active participant?
Both. Like super proud, super involved, cheering him on. I never knew I was going to learn so much about Teddy Roosevelt, but we have the costume. We've watched the biographies. We're going to see his birthplace in New York over President's Day weekend. So
fantastic.
Yeah, he's in it. So now I'm in it too. So
wow. I love this. Yes. I have our oldest is 11, 9 and 4.5. And he went through sort of he went through applying to, who knows if it makes sense, private schools, but going through the process and prepping for these tests like with him was actually really nice. We got to learn math again together. We got to write essays and learn about each other. So yeah, the school stuff can be positive, not just stressful. Mm-hmm. But so welcome. We love to start with a backstory, which I can sort of prod us along a little bit, but would love to see or to hear you kind of talk about where Sarah came from. And Sarah of Florida based, Florida raised, and 2 parents that work together running their own businesses. I gathered from the Guy Raz interview that you were a very precocious child, like eager, you described yourself as carrying a briefcase around in middle school and high school, ready to run your own business. But you tell me, where do we come from?
No, I think that's exactly right. I came from small town, Jupiter, Florida, and I loved where I was from. And as soon as I had the ability to leave, I did. I was the co-president of the Save the Manatee Club because I grew up on a river and I got to see,
Mm.
manatees being dodged, around boats. And so, my best friends and I said, we need to educate people about this and we need to fundraise to put up signs. And so I think there was always a bit of, a leader activist in me.
Mm.
I went off to the University of Colorado at Boulder, which is such a beautiful place. You can't be in the mountains in Boulder without thinking about the natural world and the
I
environment.
agree. I spent a summer in Boulder
Okay.
playing soccer out there, and I am staunchly a coastal person, so East Coast or West Coast. And I will say Boulder was the only place that I didn't feel stuck being not by a coastline. It's beautiful, and I agree. All
Place.
about let's keep the nature because it's pretty nice.
All of my science classes and all of the labs were outside, so in the mountains, in the rivers. It was a wonderful experience for me.
Yeah.
So I think that was always in me. And then I took a hard right turn. I graduated with an accounting degree and I went to go work with Ernst and Young, which is now EY. I was an auditor for a few years in Denver. I did tax for a few years in Los Angeles during dot-com one, so 1999, 2000, to date myself. And it was such an exciting time to be working with startups and dot-coms and entrepreneurs. I got to work with the actual people that started those companies.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened? Well, the market crashed, right?
Mm-hmm.
2001 happened. I went back to business school. I went to Harvard, got my
Mm-hmm.
MBA, and really wanted to start a business, but I didn't have any ideas. And I had a lot of business school debt at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I went into consulting for a number of years. I did commercial real estate development for a number of years. And then finally, I had a moment where I wasn't necessarily feeling fulfilled in my career. And I got the idea to start Swells. And
Yes.
with my
I've had a
job, I
cousin.
started a business. And then here we are. So
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted this. There's a phrase that you mentioned. I'm curious if it still resonates with you. This idea that you're a restless soul, and always, as you even say now, sort of searching for that big idea. I'm wondering, like going back to earliest days, was that always true for you? And did it relate to having parents that worked for themselves, or where did this? Why do you think you were had such a
cool.
big dream?
That's a great question. I don't know. I think I've always been a restless soul. I think I'm still a restless soul. I can't sit
Me too.
down. I can't meditate. I can't close my eyes. There's always
Yes.
something to be solved for and done.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm a good multitasker. But yes,
Mhm.
I think I've always had a little bit of fire in me.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other piece that I loved, so very practical out of UC Boulder, or majored in accounting. My husband actually did a stint at EY, and he too said, I would actually rather be my clients than be in the role that I am in, and moved along. What I really wanted to hear too about was you talked about, what was it like graduating from Harvard Business School, the best of the best. This is now happening again cyclically. It's hard to get a job. I'm wondering what you advice for people that are listening that are finding themselves kind of in that position where they've invested a lot in education that's supposed to get them to the next place.
I would steal a quote from Patty Sellers, who was at Fortune magazine for a long time, who said, your career is not a ladder, it's a jungle gym. And
Yeah.
sometimes you go sideways and sometimes you fall off. Like, I just think it's such a brilliant comment because I definitely went backwards in my career after business school. I think I made half as much the year after I graduated from business school as the year before. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, as an accountant, I modeled out, here, I'm giving up 2 years of income, I'm taking up this debt, but here's the payback period. Throw that spreadsheet out the window because I didn't actually graduate into the market that I thought I was going to graduate into. There weren't any jobs and I did go backwards. And I think my advice would be to be patient, to be as creative as possible, and that maybe your career is not linear up and to the right, but you might take a couple steps sideways, backwards, upside down until you find the right footing to where you're supposed to be. But, it is a hard market out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you've also talked about how, in hindsight, all of those jungle Jimmy experiences actually were essential to allowing you to be so effective building Swell in the end. Agree?
Absolutely. And funny
Yeah.
enough, everything that I was doing that felt like I was wasting time gave me either the confidence or the skill set, the network that I needed to get my business up and off the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other existential phrase that you mentioned too was this, is this all there is? You said you had a responsible, high paying, stable job, and kind of, but we're restless, continuing to be restless. I know a lot of people that are in that place. I was in that place. And I don't know how you came to kind of break. I don't know if you would describe it as break free and jump. I know there's the story of you famously hiking with your mom after she'd recovered from cancer and having these sort of big, I don't know, as I get older, I'm a little more woo woo than I ever was. But I feel like there are these moments where the universe sort of energetically, it's interesting that that is also when you sort of came upon the idea, this big idea you were desperate to find. But how do you go from, is this all there is, to let's leave my job and start Swell?
I think it's, you said it, is the universe opens up to you, but I think you have to be in a place to open up to the universe too. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's moments of inflection in our lives that we're like a geode ready to be cracked open, right? Like we sometimes it's so, you're so worried about protecting that core that you're not like even if the universe is there, it's sending you all the signals, you have to be open to
Yeah.
those moments. And I think it was sort of a combination of the universe talking to me and me being ready to say, and I was really lucky. I was in a position that I could quit my job and I could invest my savings in a business because
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't a mother yet. I wasn't providing for anyone else. If everything went completely wrong, I could, go back to doing taxes,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
I still had some skills that I could potentially leverage. So there was a bit of a safety net for me that I wasn't risking it all. And I think that I was in a really lucky time in my life, but I was just I was really struggling with the purpose question because I
Yeah.
had a very impressive business card, right?
Yeah.
I finally made it. I finally made sense. It made people, my family very comfortable. I had a title and they could explain what I was doing to other people. But what was all of that for if I didn't find purpose and meaning in what I was doing every day?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Totally. And is that now, so the question that you talk about being thrown at you from your mom was sort of, if you could do anything, what would you do?
Mhm.
She, I guess, said she wanted to be a painter, which is amazing. That's like an overwhelming concept of, and I think some paralyzing of I could do anything. How did you become? What was your answer then? Was
So
it?
so
Yeah.
funny enough, I sat down, I wrote a 2-page business plan for Swell, but this wasn't supposed to be the thing. This was the test because I still hadn't come up with a big idea that was going to change the world, that was
Hmm.
going to allow me to get off the corporate, career path and,
Yeah.
live my happy future. But I thought if I was willing to take a step in that direction and say, okay,
Hmm.
how do you write a business plan? How do you launch a website? How do you make a product? How do you, and then along the way, I would learn a lot of things. And then the big idea would come to me, right?
Yeah.
So this wasn't the thing. This was just like a baby step in the right
Mm.
direction. Of course, I did Swell for 12 years before selling the company, and
Yeah.
it took over my whole life. But really, it was just like a perfect storm of escalation of commitment, of just putting one foot in front of another. Of okay, these are the little milestones for this week. This is what I'm going to do this month. And the next thing I knew, I had this company.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there was something inside me that felt like someone should do this. I think I can do this. And wouldn't it be nice to use this as sort of the test ground for whatever thing that I decide to do next?
Yeah, totally. And when you say purpose, we'll ask you about this question as it because the answer probably evolves over time. But
Mhm.
at the time, you were like, I was struggling with the purpose piece. Was that purpose of my life, purpose of my work? These things for big dreamers can get very intertwined.
I
I'm
would
curious.
say it was both. Why
Yeah.
was I working so hard for what? Right. And I wasn't having any positive impact in the world. So if I was going to
Mm.
be working that hard, I'd at least want to feel like I was doing something,
Yes.
not just getting up and, going through the motions and getting promoted and making money. And I just
Hmm.
felt like, so single use plastic water bottles were just my nemesis and they were everywhere. And
Hmm.
I just kept seeing more and more people with them. And I just thought, okay, if I could create a product that was better and, worked better and was more functional and was cute and pretty and people would,
Yes.
then I could get all this plastic out of the world. And it was just something. And then when I learned about the global water crisis and how it primarily affected women and girls, that girls would drop out of school, women wouldn't have vocations out of the
Mm.
home because they'd spend all of their time collecting. I read a bunch of books about the water crisis. And I just had this aha moment of like, I could create this product that funded and educated people about this it all came to me like tied up in a bow. And
Mhm.
that's where I thought, well, someone's going to do this. It might as well. I'm going to be so frustrated if I'm not the one that brings this product to market because I thought it was so obvious that the world needed it.
Yes, totally. However, people didn't immediately get that along the way when you started to do it. And tell me about that process and how you sort of took those hits, but like kept going and
I
persisted
was
and.
very fortunate that the universe gave me multiple opportunities at failure at the beginning.
Mm,
As I mentioned, I was an accountant and
mhm,
I didn't raise money, so I had no budget for good comms people like yourself. And
mhm,
so I wrote this website. It's very, I'm sure if you go in the Wayback Machine, you can read it today.
mhm,
It's so embarrassing because it was all about the problem and not the beautiful solution. It was all about the plastic in the ocean, pictures of seagulls, that had swallowed,
mhm,
plastic. And it was all about the global water crisis and pictures of sad women and girls collecting water with the buckets on their head. And people would spend about 10 seconds on the website and then they would click away because there wasn't a positive story of how you could be part of the solution. There was one little picture of the water bottle like down in the corner, like click
mhm,
here if you want to buy my product and help make these problems go away. But I had to learn how to flip the conversation around and say, no, actually, I'm selling you a product, a beautiful solution that's going to keep your drinks cold for 24 hours, coffee hot for 12. And by the way, by using it, you're doing something really good for people and planet. And click over here if you want to do a deep dive. I just thought that everybody would care about the problems as much as I would. But what I
mhm.
didn't realize is that you really need to lean in with some pretty happy pictures and the solution. And then from there, you can educate them to get to the problems.
I know a lot of entrepreneurs are they just look around. I think maybe you said this at the very beginning, but you look around and you see problems
Mhm.
and you think, why can't this be better? Why is it done this way?
Mhm.
There are a lot of problems that you could latch on to. Why this one stuck? And maybe it was more jumping to the conclusion because I think a lot of people are out there seeking the big idea, feeling like there's some, but then wondering maybe this is the other one. Is the process of building what makes it the right pursuit?
It was the right pursuit for me because I felt that I needed to be focused on something
Yeah.
and that if I could focus on something and get that to work, then I could layer other things in. And over time, we layered in so much with Swell. Like, I don't think that there was a major nonprofit that we didn't work with,
Hmm.
from the Breast Cancer Foundation to the Girl Scouts, the Alzheimer's. I mean, like we worked with but we needed to start with one story and one message and then have some corollary messages that we could turn up and turn down over time versus having such a big tent that we're solving all of the problems at the same time and
Hmm.
therefore not easily understood by the consumer who
Hmm.
is busy and maybe has 5 seconds to consider what message you're trying to give them at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a wonderful product, and it is so like the right idea. The thing that once it's there, it's you think this should have always been there. How could this have not been there? So thank you for persisting
Thanks.
and creating this category. It's beautiful. And I certainly someone's saving the world. I hope it's you. um, so Swell, there's an Oprah moment that helps sort of I think is a version of beginning of a hockey stick ish
Mhm.
thing. You take your 30K, which is amazing to bootstrap, and it eventually grows significantly. Um, and it happened so fast. I was curious about this identity shift slash overlapping with a sense of purpose that can happen when the world changes so quickly. Of course, this is on some level what you've always dreamed could possibly be happening, but I could imagine it also feeling a little bit like maybe it's happening to you all of a sudden. And how do we keep up? I don't know if you could talk about how you kind of stayed grounded through that process.
It did grow incredibly quick. We certainly had some boosts along the way, including being included in Oprah's Most Favorite Things in the summer
Mhm.
of 2011, which was a shock. But of course, I had written her a letter, so it wasn't a huge shock when someone called me. I certainly had these moments that gave us sort of hyper growth behind it. I can't say that I was necessarily prepared as a leader to go from 10 to 50 to $100 million in sales in under 2 years.
Mhm.
The organization, the people, the systems, the process, the warehouse, none of that could necessarily scale quick enough to hang in there with that level of growth and demand. And at the
Mhm.
same time, I was learning as a leader. So
Mhm.
I had never been the CEO of a company with, over 100 employees and standing on the chair and giving the Monday meeting every week and the pep talks and trying to figure our way through. So it was a growth curve for me at the same time. How did I stay grounded through that? I keep a journal.
Mm.
And it's a 5-year journal. So it's my handwriting, 5 years ago today on the same page as 4 years ago today. And, what I realized is that it kept me grounded in such a way that whatever success I was so excited about in the past, I'd almost forgotten about when I turned the page on the year because
Mhm.
the milestones move. But it also reminded me that whatever challenge was in front of me, like whatever I was venting and writing about, like, how am I going to get through this?
Mhm.
Somehow also got solved.
Mm.
And so it sort of took off the high and it took off the low and just kind of left the middle. And I turned the page and would move on to the next thing. And so
Yeah.
it was almost like a note from my former self of,
Mm.
don't let this go to your head, but don't worry about it at the same time.
At this point, were you suddenly feeling like life was making sense? When did you start to think all of these jungle gymming things were like coming together? Was this as it was growing, or is it sort of only now that you've moved into a new chapter?
I mean, at the beginning, it
Yeah.
was like drinking out the fire hose or, the painting the plane after we had taken off. I mean, there
Yeah.
was there was no making sense of it at the time.
Yeah. Okay, an area I wanted to ask about because I think it's wonderful. So your parents obviously worked together, and then you eventually worked with your husband.
Mhm.
Tell me about that because I can imagine just as a human, that could be wonderful, catastrophic. What did
So
that do?
I mean, the poor man, he never applied for the job. He basically
Hmm.
got kidnapped. So we were dating. He's really good at things that I'm not as good at. And so I
Hmm.
said, come in on Tuesday afternoons and help me with the website, or the website would
Hmm.
crash or we'd have a problem. And I'm the entrepreneur that's running out front and saying yes to opportunities. And
Mm.
he's the type of person that is thinking about structure and process and organization. And so it enabled me to say yes to so much more because I knew somebody was going to be behind me, sort of categorizing, organizing, making sure things didn't fall. And so the
Yeah.
poor man, he went from, part-time on a Tuesday to, devoting his whole life to this project, which really became his own. So
Mm.
I would say I was incredibly fortunate in that he found me. I found him at the time that I needed him, because I don't know that we would have had the outcomes without having such a complementary skill set that I honestly didn't even know that I needed. But
Mm.
because of the scale of the growth, it was certainly an important function of our success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how I sometimes, my husband and I joke, well, I think we would love to be able to work together. In some ways, it would make life amazing to be so connected and scheduling and sort of all pursuing a similar thing. But also, I don't know, I've also heard stories about you can never take a break. You're always talking about business. Your relationship becomes all about the company, all these things. How did you, in retrospect, what kept you happily married
Mm.
afterwards? Like, how did you sort of navigate it successfully?
Yes to all. I was nodding my head as you were talking. Yes to all of those things. You can't hide from it. Like, you can't say, okay, well, I'm leaving the office, I'm hanging it up and I'm closing
Mm-hmm.
the door. It comes home with you. You talk about it over
Yeah.
dinner. You talk about it at night. But it's also helpful to have someone understands what you're experiencing, what you're going through.
Yeah.
It also really helped us become parents together.
Mm.
Because, I mean, becoming a parent is just a series of projects, right? If you
Mm.
can implement an ERP at work, you certainly can get through,
Yeah.
childcare, probably. 'Cause I just feel like we learned how to go through the unexpected moments together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that made us a lot closer in the other projects we're doing in our life.
Yeah, I love that. When did your son come on the scene? When did your son arrive? Yeah.
Almost 8 years ago.
Mm. So you were still what was going on with Swell and what were you doing professionally when he arrived?
So when he was born in Florida and Swell was in New York City. So he was born in 2018, pre-COVID, and I was
Mm.
traveling a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on the road most weeks, and my husband and I traded off. So either I was in the office or he was in the office, and the other one would be at home with him in Florida. And it was an incredibly challenging time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot to balance.
Tell me the challenge. Because I think so you were still CEO at the time.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Well,
And did you go into it with some apprehension about, is this possible? Think this is yet another, as you were saying initially, this is another project for us to sort of navigate together. It's probably going to be chaotic and hard, but that's what we do. What were you expecting? And then what was it like?
I was expecting it to be another project and to resource properly and we could get it done. But then
Hmm.
something I just had the pull to be there more. And
Hmm.
it's hard because the work was another child that really needed me at the same time. So
Yeah.
I felt like I wasn't being a perfect mom and I wasn't being a perfect CEO. It was
Hmm.
really a challenging time that I felt like I couldn't win in either, that I was missing milestones on, for either of my children by not being able to do it all at the same time.
How did you problem solve, or did you kind of accept that this is what this period will be like, is kind of not being the best on either side in some way?
Yeah, I tried to cut myself a little slack and give
Yeah.
myself grace. And my husband was so good about it. I could not have done both or either without him.
Hmm.
But the weird silver lining was COVID came, right?
Hmm.
2020. And our office got shut down. And I was home full time with my son.
Hmm.
And that was incredibly challenging because I didn't have an office to go hide in. All of a sudden,
Yes.
missed the office because I running a consumer products company during COVID was just a
I
nightmare.
can't imagine.
Making anything, shipping anything, selling anything, getting paid for anything was just, and then meanwhile,
Yeah,
everybody, right there in the house, right on top of each other. But
totally. And nobody's napping.
my son, literally on his second birthday, took his last nap. Never has taken a nap again. And that was the time that I could get all the things done.
Right.
But the silver lining was the chaos of that time made me realize that something had to change,
Mm.
but also allowed me to be really present in my son's life too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like to confront the idea that something had to change? Or did it start to, was it something you wanted to change? We talk a lot about this, and it doesn't have to be true at all, but it tends to bear out that once, a woman has a child, often the ambition does not go away,
Mm.
but there's an expanding of what maybe they want out of life in a certain way, that's
Mhm.
in almost sort of a bigger ambition.
Yeah.
um, but I don't know. But it also is. People also talk a lot about, there's some grief with that, because I was this, laser focused person who could deliver at work in a way without, I could run through walls to make things happen, and then suddenly that's not it. It's hard to do that in the same way. So how did you, that something had to change probably wasn't an easy insight. And then how did you deal with it?
I think I like what you said about like there is some grief in there. There is some sadness in there too, right? Because you can do it all, but maybe not all at the same time.
Yeah.
And this whole construct of simplicity on the other side of complexity.
Mm.
I had a big, complicated life. And first of all, I mean, I got to do all the things. Like I got to
Mhm.
have the single girl life and I had the sexy startup and I got my picture on the cover of Inc. magazine. But
Yeah.
we had an office in New York. We had an office in London. We had an entity in Canada. We were making things, shipping things, selling things. Like it was busy and it was complicated. But then on the other side of it, I had the sheer good fortune and luck that I got to choose to be a mom
Mm.
and then say, okay, how am I going to fill in around this? Like now I want to be a board member. Now I want to be an investor. I want to take on some projects. Like I don't think I would appreciate this, I hate to say simple life, this constructed life that I'm living right
Hmm.
now, if it wasn't super out of control and complicated before.
Yeah.
It's like I got to choose to turn the volume down on some of that complexity that I
Hmm.
know is still in there. Like I know I can still do those things.
Yeah.
But when I go up to my kid's school and I'm sitting on the bleachers with, a ponytail and jeans, I feel like I'm in the witness protection program.
Mm.
Nobody knows who I am. I'm just another one of
Hmm.
the moms. All of
Hmm.
that noise, all of that complexity doesn't matter. That I
Yeah.
have the honor and the joy of just being in this different life. And I don't think I would love that life as much if I didn't have all the noise of the complicated before that.
I was wondering, a lot of, the media creates storylines. A lot of the headlines related to the fact that Swell was special in and of itself, but also you were special as a woman leading this company and building, leading the fastest growing women founded, women led company at certain periods of time. Did that bring extra pressure to like continue on and sort of break the glass ceiling that's sort of broken but not. And if it were me, I would feel a lot of responsibility that I wouldn't want to be carrying to continue to be that role model ish of, which may not be the best role model, but
Mhm.
to step aside or to like choose to be a mom, quote unquote. I would, those wouldn't be, there were, those decisions are not just about you, maybe they also carry the sort of perception. Did you grapple with that, or were you wonderfully wise and clear headed and just sort of could think internally as opposed to looking externally?
I have absolutely felt the pressure, but I'm comfortable with the stepping aside a little right now. But I
Yeah.
can see the disappointment in other people's eyes sometimes
Oh,
when they say, "What are you doing now?" And I tell them, I'm like, "But no, I'm really happy. Like you have
oh,
no
I hate this.
right?"
Yes.
It's just
Yeah.
like, "No," but it's just like, but they just know that I have it in me to do it again, and maybe I do, but maybe I don't have to. I've done that
Yes.
before. But I do think that there's this societal implication of like because you can, you have to, or you should. But I do feel a real honor that I am still in service to others, but maybe in a smaller way. Like I speak on panels and I have office hours and I give out my email address to young entrepreneurs and I feel like I'm helping them out, but maybe
Yes.
I don't have to be out there, sort of at the pinnacle of my career all the time. I just have to be this accessible person to give a pep talk or make a connection where it's helpful to them in their career. And maybe that's enough for me to feel like I'm not letting all of womankind down by not leading a big company.
Yeah.
A lot of pressure.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is the pressure, I think. Am I letting? Yes. And it's interesting. I think I've talked to, mothers at different tiers of, traditional success, and they all kind of directly or indirectly suggest this feeling of letting something down by choosing what actually feels fulfilling to them and that they don't think of as a failure. But as you said, the look in people's eyes sometimes is, ooh, you had so much potential. Which is tragic because the point is to have a choice, and you can have there's so many chapters. I'm sure you're gonna, if you wanted to, you could start the next greatest company ever, so, and you're in the middle of something that's equally important in its own way too. So I empathize with what it's like to be on the other end of that, because you carry a lot. And I love that you're so generous with your wisdom about it and all of the ways that you're sharing your insights, and the office hours that you're hosting virtually and all this stuff is really incredible. Because I think part of me would also, I don't know, if you were a guy, people would be like, yeah, he doesn't never needs to do anything ever again. But here we're still trying to find a way to, I don't know, generate value. You
Mhm.
mentioned this quote enough, and I think that is something that plagues a lot of, I don't know, achieving oriented women or achievers. How have you wrestled with the idea of like being enough, doing enough kind of throughout your life, and has enough taken on a different meaning over time?
I think it has. I mean, you mentioned in the beginning that I was a restless soul, right? Like I
Yeah.
always feel like there is more and there could be more. And sometimes it is hard for me personally to enjoy this moment here, that it is enough instead of
Mm-hmm.
thinking I could be or should be.
Mm-hmm.
I do wrestle with that, but I also know that life and time goes so quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm I want to be present in this time and in this moment. I want to be here for my family. I want to be here for my son, and that always chasing the opportunity isn't necessarily honoring the fact that I feel like sometimes the greatest opportunity is already here,
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Did you have like mentors or role models in how to manage this part of life after swell?
I'm lucky that I have a lot of other entrepreneurs in my life. Some
Mm-hmm.
have had much bigger outcomes and exits, and some have had much smaller outcomes and exits. And
Mm-hmm.
we are lucky enough to be able to sort of share with each other our stories and our feelings and where we are. And it's, to me, some of the most meaningful relationships I have is hearing from others that have been in my situation and are loving their lives on the other side and maybe not there yet and helping them get there, or, just it's this club of individuals that, we loved our businesses,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time we're people too, and it's
Yeah.
okay to love your life without it, and so I'm lucky in that I have the opportunity to have others in my network that are in, when I say similar situations, it's totally different, but at least you have a similar language set that you can compare your experience to.
Yeah. Did motherhood play into the choice to step away from the CEO role at a certain point and then obviously eventually sell? Was that, I don't know, without having your son, is that something you would have done? Or
No,
is it?
I
Yeah.
wouldn't have done that without having my son. I knew that my business needed more than I was willing to give
Mm,
when my son was born. It was a huge decision for me to step away from the full time. And of course, then COVID happened, which means everybody
yeah.
stepped way back in the circle again. But it certainly was a big deciding point for me to step away, and a huge deciding point for me to sell the business as well.
How did you get quiet with yourself, as they like to say, to know that those were the right things?
With my husband in a lot of conversations, I
Mm,
realized I did everything that I set out to do,
mm,
in some cases 100 times more. Like,
mhm.
what was I doing this for? It's like I ran a race, everybody else finished the race, they got their medal, and I'm still out there jogging around. Like here I am. I'm like, wait a minute, I did the thing. I've done it.
Yeah.
Like, let's go do other things now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good for you. A lot of people look out at, these billionaires and billionaires and, starting new businesses and all, and just sort of making more money in all these ways. And most of them are men. And everyone's kind of like, why are we continuing to do this?
Mhm.
And I think it's really commendable and important that we have more role models of people that are making choices otherwise. Because to me, it suggests that to that purpose question, the purpose for you wasn't, let me make a shit ton of money.
It was.
Right?
It
Yeah.
was.
I think maybe I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your how you found purpose and identity in the business, and then that sort of shifted maybe as you had a child, and then that's probably shifted even more because I imagine identity as founder CEO, identity when you're no longer CEO is another thing to recover in a certain way. As a mom, like you wear many hats. Kind of what are the identities you've wandered through, and how do you think of yourself now?
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard for us because we have to introduce ourselves, right? We need a title for
Mm-hmm.
identity. Like, I almost didn't go to one of my Harvard reunions because I had sold the business and I didn't know how to introduce myself. Like,
Oh,
how silly is that?
yeah.
Because I was sort of in this really awkward time in between. And
Mm,
I guess I'm at the point that I've realized that I'll never need a resume again. Who
mm-hmm.
cares? Like,
Yeah.
I'm lucky in that I could introduce myself as anything I want. And it's really freed me up to say yes to opportunities that I either get joy out of, or I find purpose, or I feel like I'm in service to, or I'm helping others. I'm a board member, I'm an advisor, I'm an investor, I'm a mom, I'm on the baking committee at my kids' school. Like, I never thought those words would come out of my mouth, right? But
Yeah.
I've gotten comfortable like not having that super clear, two-sentence answer on how to introduce myself, and
Yeah.
I'm completely fine when others are uncomfortable with the way I show up, right? And so, like, I was at a wedding a number of years ago, and a friend of mine jumped in to defend me. And basically, I heard me introducing myself, and she said, "But she used to have a really important job."
Mm,
And I laugh about that now, but for me, it's completely okay that my identity has changed. And it's not to say that I don't have an ego. Like, I
mm-hmm.
want to be asked to do things. Like, I don't want the universe to forget about me. I want to be relevant, but
Yeah.
I also I don't necessarily care that it's in a way that makes that sort of, shows up in a linear fashion. Like, I'm just
Mhm.
doing things that bring me some type of joy now.
That's so profound that even you would be nervous at an HBS reunion to say, I've sold my highly successful, like famously so business. But how do I introduce myself now that people won't? There's something there. If even you feel that way, it has nothing to do with the level of accomplishment we could ever have. Because, yeah, you mentioned it was in the Guy Raz interview. You talked about it. It was post when you just moved into Start Swell.
Mm.
And I think you were back at Harvard, maybe, or maybe these anecdotes are getting blurred. But, and you mentioned that a friend of yours jumped in on your behalf saying what also sounded like someone said at this wedding, like, no, she used to have a real job. Don't worry.
Mhm.
So it's funny that doesn't go away. Do you
No,
think it ever will?
I don't.
Yeah.
But I think what goes away is caring,
Yeah.
right? Like at this point, I don't need people to know what I did. I just walk through the world with more confidence because I know that I have.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm confident in myself.
I had a question about what's a theme in the world and around women at work consistently. Certainly accelerated post pandemic, everyone's noticing that women are leaving the workforce in different ways or are not maybe pursuing the next bigger job at the same rate as they used to, or certainly maybe not at the same rate as men. I'm just curious, like, given everything we've talked about as to like sort of the purpose of work for you and how that's evolved over time, like, I'm wondering what you make of a lot of women see that and they're like, well, of course I'm not going for the bigger job because I'm holding everything down at home. This is assuming many are mothers, but I don't know what you make of it. You've been in the battlefield, you're now sort of wiser than the battlefield. I'm curious what your
Mm.
perspective is on all that.
I think it's just such a personal, choice and decision. And,
Yeah.
staying home at certain times, certainly it might be harder to get back in later, but it's not impossible. Incredibly fortunate that I started my career in corporate America in an office. As much as I, found it, I need to get out of here, and it wasn't for me. It was training and mentorship, and it was, all of the foundational scaffolding skills that I learned that gave me the ability and confidence to start my business, I got because I was able to get that, boring corporate job in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that sometimes skipping these steps might leave others disadvantaged because you
Mm-hmm.
don't have the network or the skills or the confidence to go off and do the thing. I don't think it's impossible to get back in there, whatever there is for you. And it might not be in an office, and it might be more of a, a creative,
Mm-hmm.
path. We were talking nonlinear before. But I do think it's rather unfortunate that women do have the burden oftentimes of what their families need for them. And then it is a missed opportunity for excelling later on in their career.
Yeah. Is this like a theme or a topic among, because rub shoulders with like many women that are out there building the next big thing or taking on big roles in big companies, whether Aspen Institute related or just network related.
Yeah.
Do we talk about motherhood? Or do we pretend it doesn't exist? I'm always curious.
But
Oh, sure.
I was just with an Aspen Institute group over the weekend. It was a
Mhm.
women's weekend. And I
Mhm.
can tell you that one of the top topics was motherhood
Mm.
and the challenges that come with that. And I loved being in the room because I have a little guy, and a lot of the women are more senior, older with older kids. And I'm,
Mhm.
in my mind taking tons of notes, thinking about the phases that we and I will need to be ready for in the future. But I'm also in rooms, I'm still in rooms where I'm the only woman in the room.
Mm.
And I look around and I think what a different set of conversations and challenges potentially men are not having about parenthood, right? And I'm hoping they have those at home with their families, but I'm lucky that I get to sit in a room with women and compare notes. And in the same way that, I have mentors with my business, have women that are mentors when it comes to my family to
Mm.
say, I don't have to step in every pothole, right?
Mhm.
How did you navigate around this one? What were your challenges? What were your solutions? What were the bridges that got you over those potholes? So I'm lucky that I am in networks that do have those conversations, and I don't know that everyone has those opportunities.
No, I think that's a big part of what this platform is trying to bring forward is that it's kind of like normalizing that we're all quietly carrying these things while we're in the boardroom and maybe that dude over there like isn't. And we need someone to talk to about that. And because, I totally understand. And I am actually, I think, more inclined to be a little bit of an out of sight, out of mind parent. Like when I was at Google for a long time on the product side and I knew that we'd found the right childcare when I could be at work and like not think about my kids. um, and I think a lot about this is again assuming a lot of heterosexual marriages, etc. But I always thought about how those successful guys at work, dads at work, often have, a mom at home, a wife at home. And who do the moms have at home? And they're
I
probably, yeah,
Oh, sorry, good.
go, go, go.
I was in a board meeting a couple months ago and I looked around the table and I thought, I am the only one in this room that made a casserole for my family and put a sticky note on top of it of how to cook it. And I
Yeah.
just see, like, the dudes didn't have to think about that, right? Nobody made dinner for their families before going to the board meeting and reading the deck.
Yeah.
Ah,
So my question is the goal that we should have, because 100%, is the goal then that the dudes should also be doing the casserole? Is the goal that someone should acknowledge and maybe pay us to be doing the casserole, or that we should, like, I'm trying to figure out because also sometimes we like doing the casserole.
I like it. I like it. And yes, full disclosure,
Yeah.
cooking. It's like that's my love language, and that way I don't feel guilty to be out of town because I know everyone's well taken care of, right? And so no, I don't know if the goal is to get them to do it, but maybe just the recognition that we are caring a lot more.
Yes. Yes. And what does that look like? And you don't have to have the perfect answer at all, because no one does. But I feel this. I just want it to be like acknowledged. And thankfully, and it sounds like you do too, I have an awesome husband who acknowledges it more than I do of what I do, and that really, really makes a huge difference. But in terms of like society systems that make it harder for women to reach these levels of power or influence, because often they are the ones doing the casserole, metaphorically or literally. I'm trying to figure out what for the folks that have reached that place. Do we want the person on the other side of the table, the guys, all of them, to say thank you for making the casserole, or what are we? I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what recognition looks like in a meaningful way, not just an emotional way.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Well, but I do think that just the recognition comes with it, and maybe it's the self-recognition that maybe we're doing more than we should sometimes. And
Yeah.
I think asking for help
Yeah,
and
I know.
so buttoned up and making it look so easy when we do so much that we don't get credit for, I think is maybe part of it.
Yes. Can you ask for help? Nobody that we talk to can ask for help.
I have a hard time because you know what? I'm also bossy and I think I could just do everything better. So why would I
Yes,
have to help
faster.
if I was already doing it so efficiently?
Well, thank you. This candor is gorgeous. Thank you so much. I really loved hearing everything you have to say. And truly, Swell is such a beautiful company. And you don't have to do anything, but I would not be surprised if now that you're a mother, you will look around. There's a whole other set of problems that I'm sure you're noticing that could use a swell up or a glow up or some other version of improving. Because it's, ripe for all sorts of entrepreneurial solutions. So I'm glad you have entered motherhood. We close with these little short answer questions, and then I'll let you run away. But the first one is, we like to have folks think back to their new mom self. Is there any advice or anything you would say to her?
I would tell her to be patient and not to worry. You will figure this out over time.
And is there anything or a theme of things that would have made it a little bit easier along the way so far?
Yes, my son is reading the Harry Potter books, which I have never read, and he keeps telling me that I need a house elf. So I need a house elf to come and put everything away, the dishwasher unloaded, the toys put away, so I can be more present. Because I mentioned at the beginning of this, I have a really hard time sitting down, and I sit down to try to be present with my son, and all I see is sort of the beautiful chaos everywhere, and I wish I could just block it out and be more fun for him.
Yes, the elf of invisible labor.
That's what I need.
Yes, let's make that. Yes, okay, we'll follow up on that business plan. All right, final question is, your son may listen to this one day. Is there anything you'd like to say to him?
I would say I love you and I'm proud of you. I hope you have found friends that see who you are. I hope you found purpose in your work and that you are remaining interesting to yourself.
Oh, interesting to yourself. That's a great idea. When did you come upon that concept? That's such a great idea.
My husband and I talk about it all the time, because how do you educate a child in this world right now? Like, we're spending a lot of time on, multiplication flashcards. I kind of wonder, like, does it matter? Like, in
Hmm.
this AI generation, like the way we learned and what we learned, and but what's really matter? Like what really is going to matter to him is like, does he have friends or is he lonely? Like
Hmm.
does he have joy in what he does?
Yeah,
And like when he closes his eyes at night, does he feel like he's interesting?
I love
So like
that.
we talk about this, and it's so like you asked me about like how do you find a job in this hard market? I
Hmm.
can't even think about what the market's going to look like. Like
Mm.
how do you have a 7 year old now?
Yeah.
And so I'm really trying to come back to those foundations of it is a very unknown world, but if he's happy and interesting, like okay, everything else will work its way out.
Yeah. Well, he's lucky to have you. And I feel so lucky for this conversation. Thank you so much. It was great to meet another restless soul. Seems like you're doing okay.
It's always nice to meet another Sarah. So thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. Thank
Thanks.
you. Wow, that was such an honor to chat with Sarah. I still remember, it must have been, I don't know, 2011, 11, 12-ish or something. And the Swell water bottles were starting to show up in all these places and with their noteworthy narrower top spout. And I say all this as someone who really struggles. I was going to ask Sarah this question, how I can drink more water because I don't drink enough water. Maybe I just need more Swell water bottles. Um, but yeah, I mean, a few thoughts for everyone. I think things to flag first, just from a practical figuring out what you want to do with your life standpoint. I found it really interesting that she's someone who just always wanted to do something big and really, really was trying to force herself to find the big idea. And it was in this moment of sort of release and expansive thinking and kind of letting go where the idea was able to sort of arrive. So depending on your spectrum of woo woo ness, I still think there is something to be said for letting it come versus trying to really hard to find it. And it's wonderful that she had a success story behind that approach. Um, I also loved the examples of her working successfully with her own husband in her company, and that is not always true. And kudos to them. The other, I think, big piece to me was how she handled the sort of weight of expectations as, at the time, and still any of us are that are doing this, you know, on some level, every female leader that reaches a certain level of success feels the weight of being kind of first. Um, and I thought it was really interesting to hear her talk about grappling with what that meant when she was trying to decide whether to step away as CEO or even when she ultimately sold the company. Um, and to her credit, she made, and like this is a theme from all of our guests, she made that choice within her sort of little pocket of trusted partners, primarily her husband, of what do I really want versus what is expected of me. Um, and also, I loved her talking about, why am I out here busting my ass to continue to build this thing? Like I did it. And to all the billionaires listening, like maybe we could step aside and just start giving her money away. um, the other piece that I loved was how even for Sarah, founder, former CEO of Swell, a very well-known company, very successful company, even she felt uncomfortable at a Harvard reunion once she'd sold the company, trying to define how does she introduce herself. I think the fact that even she feels that way should give us all permission to just say, I don't need to feel this discomfort because no matter what I do, it's unrelated to having a title or having an achievement behind me. There's nothing on my resume that will make this feel okay. So let's just show up to the party, grab some wine, and have a good time. And also, I love meeting another restless soul. I think kudos to us restless souls who are trying to deal with ourselves and are trying to be productive with it. And I'm sure there are a lot of us out there that are making the world better. So continue to be restless, but also be kind. And with that, I wish you all adieu. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode and we can reach even more rock stars like you. The Mothers is a production of Backline Media, shining a light on those who carry the team.